Hello and welcome to the Education Connection Day for the Midland Storytelling Festival. This program provides content for primary grades K through 3. Our tellers today are Laura Pershin Raynor of Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Willy Claflin of Richmond, California. As you listen to their stories, see if you can become story detectives and find the clues in their stories about the main characters. Then, see if you can figure out the clues to where these stories are taking place. Are you ready to find those clues? Let's go.
I once asked my father, "How did you get to be such a trickster? You're always playing tricks on mom and us kids." And my dad shrugged his shoulders and he said, "Well, my mama always told me that I was a lot like my Zadie, my grandfather. He was a real character, and I loved my Zadie, even though he could barely speak any words of English, and I had just a few words of Yiddish, but we were close." My very first memory is sitting on Zadie's lap on his favorite chair in the bay window of the old house on Holman Avenue on the west side of Chicago. I must have been only 2 or 3 years old, but I remember playing peekaboo under Zadie's long silver beard and pulling on his payas, his long sideburns, and he would chuckle and hold me tight. But it was Zadie's eyebrows that fascinated me as a kid. They were thick, bushy brows, salt and pepper brows, and they always told me whatever my Zadie was thinking or feeling. The first time the family took him to Kedzie Avenue to the marketplace after he came to this country, his eyebrows went straight up on his forehead. He was amazed by all the fruits and vegetables piled so high. Even the horses at the marketplace wore straw hats with a flower sticking up from the brim. But when Zadie was amused, one eyebrow would shoot up onto his forehead. Like the time that I thought I was being so clever, I was about 8 years old, and I spied the Hebrew teacher walking down the street towards our house. Now, I had already spent 500 hours in school that day. Why would I be stuck in a room with Mr. Finkelstein, who smelled like chopped herring on an onion roll and was very strict, for 1 whole hour every day after school? So I decided on this day I would climb up to the tall oak tree in our backyard, and I would lay perfectly still and hide from the teacher. While my mom was downstairs calling my name, "Leonard Pershin, where are you? Mr. Finkelstein's here." I lay there, hiding, thinking I was getting away with it. But I looked straight over at the second-story window of our house, and there was Zadie sitting in his bedroom, one eyebrow way up on his forehead, looking right back at me. But you know what he did? He went, and he didn't tell any of the grown-ups where I was. Now, when Zadie was angry, both eyebrows were like dark storm clouds hovering over his piercing blue eyes. Like the time I decided to convince the older boys in the neighborhood to let me play their favorite game. The Jewish boys called it baby in a lecho, baby in a basket, and the Italian boys called it ball in a hole. And they all loved to play it. It was a simple game with simple rules. You see, in those days, there were no fancy grass lawns, just patches of dirt. And that was perfect for baby in a lecho. Boys, about a dozen of us, would line up into 2 rows, and we would dig a hole, the perfect size for the hard ball we used. And then we would stand like we were bowling and wait our turn as each boy rolled that little ball down the path between the holes. Now, if the ball landed in a hole that another boy had dug, you got to chase him and try to throw the ball as hard as you could at him. But if the ball accidentally landed in the very hole you dug yourself, you had to stand against the brick wall of the alley, and every boy got to take a turn taking a shot at you. Of course, being the youngest one, I was standing there in the alley, waiting for those big boys who were lining up with glee ready to take a shot at me, when all of a sudden the back door of our house opened, and out came a wild animal in a long black coat, screaming, yelling in Yiddish, and scaring all the other boys away. I ran up to my Zadie and I hugged him in relief. I was crying. I said, Zadie, Zadie, what were you doing? And my Zadie says, this is the mama lotion, the mother language. I think everyone understand a good growl. And he laughed until he wheezed. That was my Zadie. Well, after that day, I started to think about Zadie, and I realized that my Zadie was a man of mystery. He had come to this country lean and hard from years of hunger, working as a brick maker and a tailor to support his 7 kids. And every day I knew what he did. He walked to the shul, the synagogue, where he would visit with his landsmen and pray. He would go twice a day, 1.5 miles. And he also said he spent lots of time at Douglas Park. And I wondered, what did Zadie do at Douglas Park? You know, every night, Zadie and I listened to the radio shows, the drama of the radio shows of Nero Wolfe, played by Sidney Greenstreet, and Sherlock Holmes. And even though Zadie didn't speak English, he seemed to understand certain parts, and his thick eyebrows would meet like skunks kissing when Nero Wolfe barely escaped from one of his adventures. And he would laugh when Sherlock Holmes would make jokes. But I didn't know what Zadie did during the day, so I decided, just like Nero Wolfe, I would be a spy. I would skip school and follow my Zadie. And that's just what I did. I waited behind the house, and I remembered that Zadie spent his evenings while we were listening to the radio show stitching long, narrow pockets in his long black coat for his whiskey deliveries. Zadie had an illegal whiskey still in the damp, dark cellar of our basement. When I was a kid, I was terrified of the burping, hissing sound, but now I was fascinated by this corroded boiler he had taken and turned into a still, and he would let me watch as he prepared for those whiskey deliveries. Now I was waiting in the alley for Zadie to come out of the house after breakfast, and I followed him, and I could hear those whiskey bottles clinking and clanking in those narrow pockets as he walked towards the corner of Kedzie Ave and 15th. And when he got there, I hid behind a doorway and watched as a policeman walked up to my Zadie and said, "Hey, Pop, let me help you across the street." There was my Zadie in the middle of the prohibition. He was like a walking liquor store, and I was so afraid for him until I saw what my clever Zadie did. He suddenly bent over like he was a really old man holding on to his cane, his hands starting to shake, and let that cop guide him slowly across the street so you couldn't hear the bottles clinking together in his pockets. When they got to the other side, Zadie nodded a thanks to the cop. "So long, Pop," said the cop. And Zadie walked another block like a really old man and then straightened up and took up his pace. He came to Uncle Laser's horseradish shop. And he walked in and he kibitzed for a while with Uncle Laser, and then he traded a bottle of whiskey for 3 bottles of horseradish, slipped them into his pockets, and continued on. When we finally got to Douglas Park, I thought surely Zadie would meet up with members of the Purple Gang, the Jewish mafia, and I pictured my Zadie bossing them around with his old cane flying in the air. So I was disappointed to see 2 older men sitting there with little caps on their heads, little vests, and they greeted my Zadie in an Irish brogue. I saw Zadie sit down between them, and then he started to talk, so I hid behind some bushes on the north side. But I knew if I left, Zadie would probably see me, so I lay there and I saw Zadie's arms flying. And every once in a while, I could hear the men break out into laughter. And I thought, how could he be telling them stories? He doesn't speak the same language. But I couldn't hear very well, so I got a little bored and eventually I fell asleep. When I woke up, leaves were stuck to the side of my cheek from my drool, and my Zadie and the Irishmen were gone. I walked home very disappointed in my expedition. And about a week after that, my father announced to the family that there would be a big change. We were moving to Fairbury, Illinois, about 100 miles from Chicago, where my dad was opening up a shop, a mechanic's shop. And we tried to convince Zadie to move with us, but he said that his whiskey still and his synagogue and his visits to the park were too much a part of his life. So he stayed back on Holman Ave in Chicago, living with his 3 daughters, and they treated him like a king. But at least once a week after we moved, Zadie sent letters to Fairbury, wonderful letters. And he told stories in his letters, and I felt like I was getting to know him better than any way I could follow him on the streets of Chicago. In one letter, Zadie said, Lenny, there's a rumor going around Shul that your Zadie has a big treasure box full of American dollars hidden under the floor of our cellar. You didn't know your Zadie was, how do they say in this country, loaded? In his last letter to us, Zadie said, the walk to Shul gets longer and my breath gets shorter. And my beautiful Zadie died a week later. When we went back to Chicago for the funeral, it didn't seem real until I saw Zadie's old cane hanging off of the banister, and I knew that my Zadie was gone. At the funeral, the 2 Irishmen from the park came up, and one took my hand and he said, we will miss your Zadie so much. He was the best storyteller. And that's when I could have asked the question, how is it possible for my Zadie to tell you stories when he barely spoke English and you certainly don't speak Yiddish? But I didn't ask. And I'm glad that I didn't ask, because I like to think that my Zadie, with his bushy eyebrows flying up and down over his sparkling blue eyes, could tell stories in the mama lotion, the mother language. And he didn't need words to tell those stories because he was the greatest storyteller of all.
Hello, everybody. This is Maynard Booth, and I am a storyteller, and I will be at the Midland Storytelling Festival, and I would like to tell you a little story, and then I want to hear Willie tell my favoritist story about the old woman and the drum. Here's my little story called The Moose and the Cheese. Once upon a time, there was a moose who loved cheese. I love cheese, said the moose. He loved all kinds of cheese, brie and camembert and gorgonzola. He liked Swiss cheese with little holes. You can peek through the holes like a mask. And he liked American cheese, individual slices wrapped in plastic. But one day he had eat up all his cheese. He had no cheese. Oh no, said the poor moose. I have no cheese. And he began to cry. And sobbing through the forest he come, I have no cheese. When all of a sudden, what should he spy but a crow on the branch of a big oak tree? And the crow had a great big piece of aged Wisconsin cheddar cheese in her beak. Hey, crow, said the moose, gimme that cheese. Well, the crow, she looked down and she shake her head and she say, no way! Oops. When she opened her beak to say no way, the cheese fall right out of her beak into the mouth of the moose. Yum, thank you, said the moose. And he happily went on his way. And the moral of the story, boys and girls, do not talk with your mouth full, because the food can fall right out of your mouth and land on the table, splat, and someone else could scoop it up. That is kind of a disgustifying moral, huh? Anyway, I want to hear my favorite story, The Old Woman and the Drum. So bye-bye, and I hope to see you soon. I'm going to go eat a cookie. Well, there goes Maynard. Thank you, dear. There goes Maynard. He's going to go off and eat a cookie, and I will tell you his favorite story. Maynard's favorite story is called The Old Woman and the Drum. Once upon a time, a long time ago, there was an old woman in the jungle. She was skinny as a stick. Her daughter was all grown up, and her daughter lived at the other end of the jungle. Well, the daughter really missed her mom, and so she sent a message to her mom, please come visit. And the mom thought, that'd be great. It's been a long time since I saw my daughter and her husband, but I'm scared because the jungle's full of wild animals. And this jungle was a dangerous place. It had bears, tigers, lions, and they like nothing better than to eat people. So the old woman said to herself, well, I don't know, but I sure miss my daughter. Okay, I guess I'm going to go. And she took her walking stick, which was just as skinny as she was, and she set off through the jungle. This was a strange jungle because the wild animals, well, they ate people, but they were very polite about it. So they would always say, good morning, how do you do? I do apologize, but I'm going to eat you. Well, the old woman set off down the path with her walking stick, and it went dunk, ka-dunk, dunk, ka-dunk, dunk, ka-dunk. And you can do that with me if you want to. Dunk, ka-dunk, until all of a sudden, the lion heard the sound down on the path. He came running down to see what the sound was. There was the old woman coming along. And the lion said, good morning, old woman. How do you do? I do apologize, but I'm going to eat you. The old woman said, ha, I'm just an old woman, skinny as a stick. If you eat me now, you're going to get sick. Oh dear, said the lion. I don't like to get sick. Of course not, said the old woman. But I tell you what, I'm going to visit my daughter. She lives at the other end of the jungle, She's the best cook in the whole round world. I'm going to eat and eat and eat till I get real fat. Why don't you have dinner when I get back? Ah, great idea, said the lion. You'll be plump and juicy. Thanks so much. Don't forget to be in touch. And off went the old woman. Phew. Dunk, ka-dunk, dunk, ka-dunk, dunk, ka-dunk, down the path till she got to the part of the jungle where the tiger lived. The tiger heard that sound, dunk-a-dunk, came running down to the path to see what was going on. There's the old woman coming along. And the tiger said, Good morning, old woman. How do you do? I do apologize, but I'm going to eat you. And the old woman said, Ha! I'm just an old woman, skinny as a stick. You eat me now, you're going to get sick. Oh my, said the tiger. I do detest indigestion. It certainly spoils one's mood to have stomach problems, and I appreciate you telling me this. Nevertheless, I'm quite hungry. Tell you what, said the old woman, I'm going to the other end of the jungle. I'm going to visit my daughter, and she is the best cook in the whole round world. I'm going to eat and eat and eat till I get real fat. Why don't you have dinner when I get back? A capital suggestion, said the tiger. Don't forget to get in touch. And off he went. And the old woman went, Phew! And through the forest she went, dunk-ka-dunk, 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 until she got to the part of the jungle where the bear lived. The bear had had a terrible morning. Well, the bear went up a tree to get some honey from a honeycomb, but the bees stung the bear on the nose, and it really hurt. And the bear's nose was so sore that the bear forgot to hold on to the branch and fell down to the ground and hurt his knee. So the bear was there, heard the dunk-a-dunk sound. What a lousy morning, said the bear. Along came the old woman. The bear said, Good morning, old woman. How do you do? I'm going to apologize. I'm going to eat you. Oh, said the old woman, I'm just an old woman, skinny as a stick. If you eat me now, you're going to get sick. And the bear began to cry. What a rotten, lousy morning. What a rotten, lousy stuck on my nose, and I hurt my knee, and you're too skinny to eat. Ah. Oh, dear, said the old one. There, bear. I'm going to go visit my daughter who lives at the other end of the jungle. She's the best cook in the whole round world. I'm going to eat and eat and eat till I get real fat. Why don't you have dinner when I get back? Okay, said the bear. Thank you. I'll see you later. And off went the bear. And the old woman went, whew, close. And dunk-a-dunk, 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 until she got to her daughter's house. Oh, her daughter was so happy to see her. So was the daughter's husband. They welcomed her in, and the daughter was the best cook in the whole round world. And she cooked and cooked and cooked, and they ate and they cooked and they ate and they cleaned up and they cooked and they ate and they slept and they cleaned up and they cooked 5 huge meals every day. Well, about after 2 weeks, the old woman was no longer skinny as a stick anymore. She was quite plump. But she figured it was time for her to go home. The daughter said, It's been so much fun having you here. Stay another 2 weeks, okay? So the mother stayed another 2 weeks, and she ate and ate and ate 5 meals a day. They ate and cooked, cleaned up, ate, cooked, cleaned up, ate, cooked, cleaned up, slept, and ate some more. And at the end of that month, those 4 weeks, the old woman was round. I mean, completely round, like a circle. You would not know which part was which, except there was a head on top, and there was 2 feet on the bottom, and 2 hands on the side, but she was completely round, like a ball. Well, she was sitting there at breakfast. It was time for her to go, and she was crying into her tea. Sploop! You could hear her tears. Sploop! What's the matter, Mom? Said the daughter. Well, said the old woman, I told the animals not to eat me when I was coming over here because I was skinny, to eat me when I went back home because I'd be plump and juicy and fat. Now they're going to eat me. Oh, dear, said the daughter. Oh, dear, said her husband. What are we going to do? They sat down and thought about this, and the husband said, You know what? I bet we can make a great big drum, a great big huge bass drum, and we'll shove you inside, Mom, and we'll tie the top on the head of the drum, and we'll just roll the drum down the path. And you can roll all the way home. Animals won't even know what happened to you. That's what they did. They built this huge bass drum. They stuffed the old woman inside. They tied the top on and they pushed it down the jungle path. And any time the old woman wanted to go faster, she could just turn head over heels inside the drum. So down the path went the drum, rumpity-bumpty, rumpity-bumpty, rumpity-bump, till it got to the part of the jungle where the bear lived. Bear heard that sound, rumpity-bump, came down to the path, see what was going on. Yo, said the bear. He sniffed the drum. Smelled familiar. He felt silly talking to the drum, but he did anyway. He said, excuse me, have you seen an old woman who's fatter than fat? No, said the drum. Nobody like that. Well, I mean, it was the old woman inside the drum. Oh, okay, said the bear. And rumpity-bump, off went the drum, and the bear was curious, so the bear followed along behind. Rumpity-bumpty, rumpity-bump, down the jungle path, rolled the drum until it got to the part of the jungle where the tiger lived. Tiger heard that sound, rumpity-bumpty, rumpity-bump. He saw the drum rolling down the path, followed by the bear. The tiger, that's unusual. Go see what's happening. Ran down to the path. Yo, said the tiger. Went and sniffed the drum. Smelled familiar. Now, excuse me, said the tiger to the drum. Have you seen an old woman who's fatter than fat? No, said the drum. Nobody like that. Okay, said the tiger. And off rolled, of course, it was the old woman inside the drum. Off rolled the drum, rumpity-bump, followed by the bear, followed by the tiger, until they got to the part of the jungle where the lion lived. And the lion looked out from behind some big fronds. And he saw the drum, and he saw the bear, and he saw the tiger. He thought, it's a parade. So he ran down to the path. He held up a paw and said, hello, drum, drum, drum. Tell me, have you seen an old woman who's fatter than fat? No, said the drum. Nobody like that. Said the lion. Off rolled the drum, rumpity-bumpty, 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 rumpity-bump, followed by the bear, followed by the tiger, followed by the lion, until the drum hit a big rock in the path. Boom! Now, the old woman knew where that rock was. That rock was just at the place where the secret path off to her little cottage was. Do you think she got out of the drum right away? She sat there for a while. Well, the lion and the tiger and the bear, they sat down and waited and see what would happen. Sun went down. Moon came up. Around midnight, lion fell asleep. Bear tried to stay awake, but about 3 a.m, the bear fell asleep too. And by about 5 a.m, all 3 of them were asleep. Well, when the old woman heard 3 different snoring sounds, she knew they were all asleep. And so very quietly, she untied the top of the drum. She stepped out, and very slowly she pulled the drum back into the underbrush, off the path, down the secret passageway to her house. And when she got to her little house, she opened the door, pulled the drum in behind her, slammed the door, and locked it 4 times. Chung, 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 chung. Sun came up, animals woke up, no drum. They were very confused, very perplexed, and very hungry, and they went home rather discouraged. As for the old woman, she had so much fun. She learned to play the drum. Rumpity-bumpity, rumpity-bump, tum-tum-tum, pow, boop. So she lived happily forever after. And if you're ever in the jungle in Indonesia, and you hear that sound, rumpity-bumpty, rumpity-bump, you'll know where you are. You're near the old woman's cottage, and there she is, playing her drum.
Please join us for the remainder of our festival. Go to our Facebook page or our website at midlandstorytellingfestival.org to see the full festival schedule. Then keep it locked right here on our YouTube channel. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Tell everybody. And thank you for watching.